everybody. Speedy here, the new Studio Inc. Back to continue Tales from the Drafting Table. This is episode 24. This episode is going to be a bit of a different one. I'm going to have to take a temporary break from the Plato-Aristotle draft because it requires a lot of detail. It is about working out the details to prep for painting, and I'm in a situation, as you can kind of see, where I have an eye infection in my right eye. But I'm extremely adaptable and resilient. And while I can't do really detail-oriented drafts and preparation for paintings, I can still draft. I can still draft things. Not everything needs to be detailed. Sometimes you've got, in the beginning, you've got to kind of sketch out and work things out that purely come from your imagination. And so I'm going to name this episode Adaptability, because that's exactly what I'm doing in this one, and I'm going to take a temporary hiatus from working on the second subject of the series to do a bit of storyboarding and thumbnailing for a animation I'm in the process of developing, because it doesn't require details as much as it's about breaking down scenes. So we'll see how this goes, and then I'll fill in while I'm working on it exactly the things that occurred to kind of cause a delay. Now, I did make a post on YouTube about part of the reason why my schedule got off as far as uploading on the days I'm supposed to. There's still at least once a week Tales from the Drafting Table still going to come out. It's just that until my eye is healed, I can't get back on the second subject of the series. So in the meantime, I'm going to adapt and do what I can do with one eye. Okay, so anyway, let's get into this, shall we? All right, well, we're going to do a little one-eyed work today. Best way I can put it, y'all. I mentioned in the intro and so forth about adaptability, and that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to go ahead and do some sketching and prepping for prologue for an animated series that I came up with that I'm getting prepped so I can produce and then take to film festivals. And I wrote it actually a little while back. I mentioned it before. She started out as just a kind of a spokesperson, and well, it grew. She was just supposed to be a spokesperson talking about my schedule. And speaking of, I've been pretty steady with my upload schedule, but I had a bit of a disruption. Like I said, being one-eyed here, I chose to work on something which doesn't really require precision. This is more about like hammering out little thumbnails and snapshots of how I want the story to visually and verbally, verbally flow, although I think that this may entirely be sonic and musical. So, but the character, her name was Bunny V, and I did a little short that kind of had her in it, and most of the animation and work I've done with her so far has been purely digital, but I actually have a name for it now, and I thought, well, let's go ahead and bring that part to life, shall we? Anyway, I had a good bit of fortune. One thing that I made clear early on in my channel, and I guess I probably need to reinforce, is that when I get commissions or opportunities to do my work as an artist, I always check with the person who commissioned me if it would be acceptable for me to film and share it on my channel, because I do want to share projects and commissions when I do get them. But this was a case where the commission I got was to do a small mural inside of somebody's dining room, where they wanted a small, like, estate portrait, like they were looking out their dining room window at an Italian villa garden. And they wanted it in their dining room. Um, so I got a commission to do that, but obviously it was inside somebody's home, and they wanted privacy. They didn't want to share this. This is a special thing for those that they invite as guests to their home to dine with them and so forth. So I have photos for my portfolio, but we didn't do any filming there to respect their privacy, and the commission it was a good commission. It was worth it, so I accepted it. But doing that meant that it threw off my filming schedule, and I spent 3 days working on it, and I really love the results, and I'm really proud of the work, and I'm very happy with it. But there will be times where I get a commission where the customer they want privacy, and so I can't really upload even my vlog and stuff because, well, the art and the customer comes first. When I get a commission, I do it. And when they want privacy, I respect it because, that's the way the art world works sometimes. So I got it done. I got paid. It came out really nice. It's going to be in my portfolio. I can show that privately, but I'm going to continue to respect their request and not even put it up on the channel at all, because it's their own private treat, trophy, if you will. They want for their own entertaining, and I will leave it at that. But it was really fun to do, and I'm really happy about it and how it came out. Now, my first day back at work was Monday, and I didn't do a Garden and Grail episode for Monday because technically the way Garden and Grail is, Garden and Grail, hold on, I've got an alarm going off. Let me pause this real quick. Sorry about the pause. Okay, sorry, had to go take care of that alarm that was driving me crazy. Anyway, yeah, on the subject of Garden and Grail is about how I spend downtime, because I am working fiercely as an artist, and I'm working a full-time job to pay for my studio, because I'm not quite in that place where I get enough commissions to only be operating my studio purely from my commissions. Maybe one day I will, but I don't put too heavy of expectations on those kind of things. And also, I don't want to only be caught up doing commission work. If I really went after it, I could be running my studio purely from doing commissions, murals, and t-shirt jobs and different things like that. But honestly, I've got my own dreams and I've got my own projects, and if I wanted to be full-time commissioned, I would already be it. That's not really what I want to do. I have a vision that's away from the more commercial aspects of art. I'm a storyteller, I'm a lore builder, and I've got a number of IPs. And this one actually was born in a very unusual way. I have others besides it, I'm just inventing a font here. And like I said, my eye is compromised, so I can't do as detailed work as I want. But I can get flesh out a prologue and a storyboard for this new creation. This creation came from an unusual place. It really did start as just a simple, funny, trickster little bunny that was going to be my mascot for the channel, who did my scheduling shorts and things like that, and updates, like a spokesperson for the studio. And a thing I don't do a lot, but is a big part of it. I don't show it a lot on the channel, but a big part of it is musical for me. I write music, I write a lot of poetry, things like that, and I compose music. And I go where the muses take me. So after creating her as a spokesperson and doing a few shorts with her little funny kind of studio promo shorts, I was at work that night, and my brain was still in the studio working on her a little bit. There's always that like hangover, if you will, from transitioning from studio time to vocation time, where I'm working for somebody else's objectives, right? And so while I'm doing my job and trying to focus on what my actual job is at my work, it visually started to fade, but the theme and who the character was kept playing around in my head, and it became music. And so a theme song for her was born, and that theme song told a story about who she is. And one thing led to another. I ended up writing an entire trilogy for her during my lunch break. So she grew out of, she grew out of something simple. I already have IPs on the table like RPG and others, that I'll give more information about as I get closer to releasing them. But funny enough, boom, she just kind of popped out, and grew into more. I guess she was intended to grow into more. Now give a context of why bunnies. Number one, it's very normal to use animals in the place of humans when you want to tell a very intense story. Number two, my baby book. Some people get stuffed animals. A lot of people, it's a tradition to get stuffed animals, right? When you're a little bitty kid, you get your baby or a early toddler, you get your teddy bear, if you will. My brother got a teddy bear, and he was called T-Bear in the family. And mine, I was, the eldest. Mine had to be different. Mine had to be mine, So, Dad got me a stuffed rabbit. And boy, does that stuffed rabbit have a story all on its own, right? So Dad got me a stuffed rabbit, and the story of this stuffed rabbit is in my baby book. Dad and them were so proud and happy about giving their new baby its first stuffed animal and all of that, and they wrote this whole thing about it. And my dad named it Alfonso. So where my brother got T-Bear, something pretty easy to say for a toddler, right, or a baby. Me, I got a stuffed bunny named Alfonso. Alfonso, yeah. I couldn't even say that till I was 12. Then adding to it, I started out early on in life with a speech challenge. And I had to go and learn how to speak properly, if you will. So that just made it even more humorous, if you will. Ultimately, I lost this rabbit to starting a fire. I believe that's how the story goes. My bunny got destroyed, and so did some electronics that I threw it behind. Oh, poor people in the 70s, they just made do with what they could as far as electronics, and they weren't necessarily always brand new, if you will. Right? So Bunny B, she was actually kind of born out of funny nostalgia thing that for whatever reason I got a stuffed rabbit instead of a stuffed bear as my first stuffed animal as a baby. And the trope on rabbits historically is this idea of the trickster rabbit. And you have things like the story of the tortoise and the hare, if you will, where this clever, arrogant rabbit, challenges this turtle to a race, which there's so much that goes into that already when you think about it. Number one, the rabbit is obviously kind of cowardly, I guess you could say, or this false bravado, this false arrogance, this idea that, obviously I'm the fastest, obviously I'm the best, but then chooses to prove it by taking on a challenger that by all accounts shouldn't even have the ability to keep pace at all. So the rabbit decides to prove itself by racing a turtle, and fails. It's arrogance. The rabbit's arrogance gets in the way of succeeding. So it's still a cool story, but the rabbit still tries to win through trickery and all of this when it realizes it's behind. And it's more or less a story about, procrastination. And in this story, it's not the rabbit that was clever. Actually, it was the rabbit that thought it was too clever to lose, too good to fail, and ultimately gets humbled and fails. I like that. Um, so, like, but there are other stories, like, well, heck, Monty Python and the Holy Grail. There's also some stories from Asia and Japan about rabbits being tricksters. Then you can take it even further than that. You can think about, like, Bugs Bunny, right? Bugs Bunny's entire thing was being a smartass and always outwitting Elmer Fudd, the hunter, and things like that. Always outwitting the other characters and winning based on his wit and his intellect, right? But one thing Bugs Bunny definitely did have, though, was the arrogance. The arrogance was definitely there. There we go. Bunny B. She's kind of ugly. Like I said, I don't, it's harder to do this with one eye, and I'm not worried about accuracy so much as just sketching out, like, the thumbnail of what she's supposed to look like. So naturally, like I was saying, though, my schedule got thrown off because of commissions, which commissions are always going to come before anything I put up on the channel. If I get a commission to do something and it's going to interfere with me being able to upload, one of my subjects, even my vlog got off. Everything will resume and get back on schedule. I think Tales from the Drafting Table from now on will be Thursdays only. One, it's going to give my eye a chance to recover and gives me a good chance that the next one I'm working on will be Aristotle and Plato, the continuing of that one like I'm supposed to. But also, like, I do still, like I said, I have commissions, and now that I've got this, I've got, like, lots of things to work on. So I will be doing the painting thing, the execution series, that will be coming up, but it's all about me recovering from taking time to do that commission. And then, of course, I go back to work on Tuesday, and everything's mostly fine, but my eye starts feeling a little irritated. No big deal. But then by about 3 in the morning on Tuesday, it was swollen, itchy, and seeping. Come back down here to the studio today, rinsed it out really good, cleaned it, and bandaged it, give it time to heal. And part of giving it a chance to heal is to not overuse it, not use it really. So I've blocked it off. There you go, a nice intro thing. It's not really what I want. I want something more like this. I want it to be more moody. But like I said, I'm just throwing down some thumbnails for the prologue or intro. And yeah, I'm not even using perfect material. I don't need it to be. I just need it to, like, help me get a scope of the story. I think what this one is right here is just taken from what I've already done with the digital character. Now, in terms of animating it, her character is going to get refined a lot more, and I'm going to do a lot deeper concept work. And this character that I did here, she is, she's more the spokesperson one and the initial one that was created. And also, in that sense, that means that she's, this is an image of her after the events that made her who she is in this picture. So, the prologue, she's just your normal little rabbit. She's not got a little bow. She's not upright. She doesn't have the humanistic, anthropomorphic behavior. And like I said, we typically, creatively, it's a long, old thing. When you have a subject that ends up being a heavy subject, you will sometimes want to use animals to kind of take the bite off the subject a little, to give people a chance to see the story and temporarily suspend the fact that the awful things that are happening in the story happen to humans. Sometimes it's too on the nose. It's too painful, and in a way, think Schindler's List. It's a good movie, right? And it was an important movie to be made. But at the same time, because it was dealing with humans, you could see a lot of people who can't handle traumatic things happening to humans, um, overlooking the story and focusing in on the individuals and not thinking about the overreaching story of what Schindler's List was really about. Because the overall overarching story is a very painful subject. And sometimes the best way to broach a painful subject is actually to do it with animals, use animals. Das Mouse is a perfect example where he retells the story of his parents' survival from the Second World War as, you know, Hebrews fleeing persecution and so forth, and the trials and things they had to go through, the people they lost along the way, those kind of things, right? To take the bite out of the story, he made it rabbits. He made it mice. He made it mice, scurrying like mice. Kind of fitting, because there's a lot of things about that era and about. There's even songs about it. They stood in line. I mean, they knew they were getting executed and they didn't resist. And a lot of people would like to tell them, so that wouldn't happen to me. I wouldn't just let them take. Yeah, you say that, but you don't know. You don't know until you're in those shoes how you really would behave. And so it's a very heavy subject. And he did the right thing by choosing to have animals in it, to kind of cover that. That way people wouldn't project, oh, well, I mean, they were this and they were that because they didn't stand up for themselves. They just let it happen. Yeah, it wasn't that simple, and tragedy and that kind of threat isn't that simple. It's just really not. So what happened with Bunny V is I have her origin where she starts out, where she's born, because this is a prologue. And I mean, this is only kind of a sketch and it's not perfect. I've got the reference material already for how I want to work this out. But this is, the setting is a very dark and somber type of setting. But my story that I developed was a way of tackling an interesting subject that kind of a lot of people have had their point of view on, I guess you could say, have shared their point of view on, and opinions. And opinions sometimes is a problem, you know? An opinion is all it is somebody's perception on something. An opinion is not a fact. It's not a reality, it's an assumption. And there's this place called the Eagle's Nest. I'll give that much away. So, I have her rabbit hutch that she's born in is in a very dark and auspicious place historically. And she is essentially being raised and is the property of a very curious and controversial human being. She doesn't stay there long. It's just her starting point. These mountain ranges, And so the people who know will instantly recognize it. The people who don't, I do enough in my storytelling that they will be able to figure out who and where the setting for it is. But yeah, so you want your nice long shot to open things with. And me, right now I hear music. I hear music for the opening. I hear the sound of nature, but isolated alpine nature, way up in the Bavarian mountains. That gives you another hint. It's in the Bavarian mountains. So, anyway, all from a song. A song came to me that told me her origin story. And is like what this prologue is actually about. And like I said, because of my vision being impaired, I can't be real detailed, but I don't really need to be for doing thumbnails and working out these kind of things. It's totally fine because I'm really just setting up shots, different scenes. And this is like the intro scene setting, the long shot that sets the mood, Shows the environment. This probably needs to be lowered some so I can get more mountain range in the background, more sky, alpine sky. But yeah, this happens in the Bavarian Mountains. It's a beautiful area. I've been there to visit. And let's just put it this way, the person that it was given to was afraid of heights and had a fear of like lightning strikes and things like that, so he didn't really visit it very much. But his mistress, she did. She spent a lot of time there. She entertained a lot there, and she enjoyed the space. And she is an interesting figure. That's the way I like to look at her. I like to be giving and consider the context of the situation, and the fact that she was a female for one in an era where it's not that women didn't back then have like strong enough character to have a presence or like individual power or autonomy, but considering the person's age and her upbringing, I don't think it's that surprising that she ended up the mistress of a monster, if you will. That's the best way to reference it. And that she took on some of his characteristics and traits in her behavior. And so there's a lot of kind of dark stories that are attributed to the Eagle's Nest and her time there. I don't know. I think a lot of that's post-war film propaganda, and I don't think it's necessarily reality. I think it's guilt by association more than it is reality. We really don't actually know all that much about what she did there. And so I felt like it's the perfect place to have this rabbit hutch and have our character Bunny B be born. She's not there long, and there's a lot of metaphor going on in this. And hence again why I don't think that this is actually going to have words. I think this is going to have sounds. I think it's going to have sounds as in like the rabbits will make sounds, but it'll be more about you reading the intonation coming out of those sounds, the intent, reading the emotions in those sounds that are coming from them. This way, I think it holds up stronger visually. It's going to rely on its visual storytelling more than your verbal, narrative type or dialogue type driven thing. I don't think the dialogue is necessary. Sometimes it's not. It gets back to an old artistic understanding that you should show, not tell. And so when you got something that's dialogue heavy and narratively heavy, to me that's always shown a lack of artistic vision and skill. I'm working towards it being musical and auditory to tell the story, but letting mostly the visuals do the work. Lower, more sky. Get mountain range in background. Yeah, sorry, I'm making notes while I do it, because yeah, this is just me storyboarding and scripting out how I want the opening to be. Gray, pale, alpine, Bavarian, pre-winter, so no snow on the ground yet, but heading that way. I'm thinking 1939, maybe 1940. Let's see. There's, like I said, I'm doing this right now from memory. I've got the reference material. What will ultimately happen is I'll do a very serious rendering of the custom garden or Eagle's Nest in Bavaria. I've got some emails out that I'm waiting for contact back from the people who officially maintain it as a tourist venture so I can get more detailed information from them. Much of this story actually takes place on the east side, on the kitchen side of it. The the sky terrace that they had, and they had an herb garden and edible garden of alpine herbs and plants and so forth. It was referenced as Hitler's tea house sometimes. Ava was the one who hosted there. So just go ahead and give away the fact that this happens at Ava Braun's house. Technically Hitler's house, but it was her. And she used it more than he did. She spent a lot of time entertaining friends. She had receptions. She had parties, like things like that there, like for her sister, wedding reception, thing like that. Actually, I think it happened down at the house in the lower valley where Hitler actually preferred to go to. Sounds like an unusual setting. It probably kind of is. And it's not really about that subject. It's not about, like, that at all. It's about something else, and I'll let the story take people where it needs to take them. But in terms of storyboarding and getting the setting, I want it to be both beautiful but somber. That's the best way to put it. Bella mixed with somber. Somber kind of almost sleepwalking kind of thing, because somewhat in the narrative of this, there is this understanding that there was just normal people that didn't have a dog in the fight and didn't pick sides, and for that matter weren't really paying attention to what was going on politically or any of that. They were pretty content to be chefs and maids and weren't paying attention to things that they felt were above their station, if you will. And Europe in that era was still very much somewhat of caste, a class kind of set up, meaning you weren't supposed, marrying above your station was the objective, if you will. So that was still very much a part of European culture. It may still be a little bit. It wasn't my experience that it was like that while I was there. People in the modern era don't realize how lucky they are that we live in an era where you can choose a partner based on actual love instead of social or economic considerations. We have the freedom to do that. There are some people that are still trapped in that kind of negative behavior, and I look at people in the modern era who marry for status, who marry for economic reasons. I kind of don't like those people. Mainly because there are so many tragedies in human history's past of how people were not able to marry the person or be with the person they loved. They had to be with who improved their status, improved their situation, but not who they truly loved. And so I think of all of the people throughout history who couldn't experience true, real love, or that it was always out of their reach, because they had to do the survival dance, came before love. So tragic. I also think that's why there's a lot of, even in the Bible, there's like romantic poetry, if you will. I think that's actually why when we look back at the past, there's a lot of romance. And a romantic era, if you will, is because technically the romantic ideal would be that you'd be lucky enough to actually love the person that you married for economical and societal reasons. That would be romantic. That would be luck. Most people did not get to marry for love. And so the people in the modern era who forsake real love for status and economic reasons are really spitting in the eye of every human in the past who had to marry and live a life, a lie, if you will, to survive. You know, and so I kind of don't like people that shop for spouses based on status. I don't like clout chasers or any people like that. I think it says a lot about the person psychologically, how much they lack inside their own selves, how they have a very negative view of their own selves, that they have to be elevated off of another person instead of elevating themselves. I take people like that to be very uninvolved, and I don't like to hang around people like that. Um, I like to be around real people who love truly and respect the freedom that we all have now that we didn't used to have. But most people don't have an understanding or a context for how privileged and how blessed they are to live in a modern era. I look at it. You have to research a lot to do what I do. Telling stories, creating visuals, making music. You need to know, you need to experience, you need to learn. And I do a lot of research, and I've been doing a heavy amount of research on this. And initially it didn't start out at this particular location, but I found that there to be something very fascinating about Ava Braun. She's not spoken of much and not very often seen as a human. She's a persona that nobody seems to have any empathy for when they discuss her time period, her choices. And so I felt like it would be a good starting place. And with Bunny B and her origins being in such an unusual place, and it's where she escapes from. So it literally is only a starting point. I gotta write some notes real quick about it. Like, opening scene, Eagle's Nest. Ooh, this eraser is terrible. I need a better eraser. Anyway, I think it's a pretty good place to stop. Yeah, I only did 2 little thumbnail sketches, but I mean, I'm not even sure how well they come out in this. Like I said, I'm just showing some adaptability. I can't do high detailed work right now. I can work out storyboarding, and yeah, for the writing and stuff, I really do need I need a better eraser. I need some tools I don't have at the table. Anyway, I didn't want to end up making this too long anyhow. So, I'll pick back up tomorrow. If my eye isn't better, I may continue it. In a way, I feel like somewhere along the lines I need to maybe finish filming the storyboard, and then I'll do a really quick video. It's a standalone that shows the sped up of me creating it and flipping through it when it's finished. Okay, yeah, it's a good enough stopping point. I've got more research to do. Alright, so that concludes episode 24 of Tales from the Drafting Table. I appreciate everybody that come take the time to check it out and stick with me through the challenges. I think we covered some interesting subjects and stories and so forth. And maybe I'll end up using this in some behind-the-scene footage for this animation once it's completed and I'm ready to take it to the festivals. Alright, I hope everybody has a wonderful day wherever you are, and I hope everything that you dream of becomes manifest. Alright, Speedy out. Bye, y'all.